Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew, and welcome back to Frames of Space.
Hey everyone. I just want to say, I want to flag for you up front that today's episode is probably one of the most unique podcast experiences I've had in a long time, and I think you might feel the same way. There are three big reasons why this episode stands out, and I want to walk you through them before we dive in. So first up, there's a pretty abrupt topic shift about 10 minutes in, and it's not a typical smooth transition, but I hope you'll find it interesting regardless. And the reason for this shift mainly comes down to today's guest, who goes by the name of Jordan Schneider. If you're not familiar with him, Jordan is the host of the podcast ChinaTalk, where he dives deep into U.S.-China relations and the machinations of the U.S. government and the nature of U.S. foreign policy. So when I got him on the show, I wanted to explore both his experience as a podcaster and his expertise in U.S. foreign policy. The first part of our conversation is all about what he's learned from podcasting, his process, his challenges, and what keeps him coming back to the mic. But then, we do eventually make that sharp turn, and we start digging into U.S. politics, the current state of U.S. foreign policy, and the unprecedented levels of corruption and incompetence that we're seeing in the current administration. After all, the current president is setting some pretty troubling precedents, and setting some pretty troubling norms, ones that could shape the future in some disappointing ways if we don't look out for them. And that leads to the second reason why this episode is unique, which is that it is an incomplete interview. Usually I like to wrap things up neatly, but sometimes life just gets into the way. Towards the end, I asked Jordan a very big question about the types of precedents and the types of norms that are being set right now. And just as we were getting to the heart of it, he had to run, quite literally, to pick up his kid from daycare. So, unfortunately, the conversation does end a bit abruptly, and I am hoping to have him back for a follow-up. But even without that final answer, I do think the substance of our discussion is strong enough to stand on its own. Hopefully, this is a conversation that'll end in a way that leaves you wanting more, rather than less. And finally, the third and final reason this episode is special has to do with something I've never done before. It ends with an AI-generated song, like an actual song created by AI based on the themes and main points of our conversation. This is something that Jordan does on his own podcast, and I thought it would be fun to pay homage to his style by trying it out myself. After we wrap up the interview, you will hear my very first attempt at an AI-generated song, and I'm very curious to hear all your thoughts on how it went. You might find it surprisingly catchy, or you might think it's the cheesiest and cringiest thing you've ever heard in your life. Either way, I hope you find it interesting, and maybe even a little bit entertaining. If you have strong feelings about it one way or another, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can always leave a comment on my Substack, which also has the same name as my podcast, Frames of Space. And let me know if you want to hear more AI-generated music in future episodes. It was a lot of fun to put together, even if I'm still not sure if it's brilliant or just plain embarrassing. So to sum it all up, today's episode is quite a bit of an experiment. It is not my typical podcast episode for sure, but I think that you might get quite a bit out of it regardless. Now here's my conversation with Jordan Schneider. Jordan Schneider, thank you so much for taking the time to come onto this podcast.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, so you're known for many things. Obviously, you're known for your commentary on China. You host a podcast called ChinaTalk. So I would love for your takes on that and maybe U.S. foreign policy more broadly. But yeah, maybe let's start with a table-setting question. How long have you been podcasting?
2017 fall, I think was the first one. We're over 500 episodes now. I should buy some cheese to celebrate something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
How would you say that podcasting has helped you to learn more about China or U.S. foreign policy? in a way that you wouldn't have been able to do otherwise?
Um, I mean, maybe just like how does podcasting help you learn is probably the most relevant question here. I mean, it's a forcing function for you to do the prep. Like, I mean, I remember being in college and the amount of courses that I actually felt I had to do the reading for to not be embarrassed in the seminar was like only maybe a quarter or a fifth of them of all this, you know, my parents paying tens of thousands of dollars a year for this, and I like feel like I'm not actually forced to do the work. If you are sitting in a one-on-one conversation with someone and like it's about their book, if you haven't read their book, it's like really obvious and really embarrassing for you. So there's a bit of pre-commitment, I think, with booking a podcast guest. Like I just did 2 shows about quantum, and in order to make them sort of worthwhile and to not be embarrassed when I spoke to these experts, I spent some time to try to wrap my head around it. And I think that those constant kind of like gates or like checkpoints of, all right, I have to write a script, which requires me to understand what this person is about, which requires me to learn a thing about a new topic that I am interested in because I am selecting the guest. No one's forcing guests upon me. Has been a fascinating continuing education journey. And I feel like I got a whole lot smarter in the 5+ years that I've been doing this podcast than in like the 5 years or so after college before when I didn't have this to kind of keep me going.
Which types of experiences do you think you learned from more? The times when you hosted a podcast and you were proud of your work, or the times when you hosted a podcast and you felt really embarrassed about how you did?
Oh, I mean, that's an interesting question. I think that the embarrassed how I did is usually like performative stuff. Like if I fanboy too much, I think initially I was intimidated, particularly by elected officials or politicians or administration officials, and sort of overawed by them, or like didn't quite know how to make them interesting. But I don't know, like I'm like embarrassed is not something that resonates a lot for me as a human being. And maybe that's why I feel comfortable just like shooting the shit in front of tens of thousands of people multiple times a week.
Yeah, talking to like the most prestigious like politicians or military officers you could find.
Yeah, but it's more just like I don't like as a young person, you've been in school for a while, you kind of know what academics are about or know what thinking people are about because they're just people who like sit around and read and write. But there's more kind of 3D chess that's going on when you're talking to someone in a position of power or someone who needs to win an election or someone who has a boss whose views maybe disagree with them about the topic and what have you. So it's like a different type of kind of contextual learning to speak to current officials than it is with people who are, unaffiliated.
Yeah, but sometimes I'm kind of fascinated by how you're able to talk to so many like officials. How do you get such high profile guests on a regular basis? Like share with me your wisdom so that I can talk to more of these people.
I mean, honestly, Andrew, I think they've been some of my worst shows. The senators and the representatives, because they can't just like say what's on their mind.
They're too media trained, like PR trained, right?
Yeah, they're really good at their thing, right? And for instance, like I just spent this afternoon listening to Dwarkesh talk to Jensen, and he asked all these like very sharp, very informed questions about China and export controls and whether NVIDIA should sell chips to China. And Jensen, as he's making his arguments, is speaking to multiple audiences at once. He's sort of trying to answer Draga's questions, but more importantly, not trying to piss off Trump, not trying to piss off the Chinese government, not trying to piss off or not trying to discourage investors who don't want him to say, oh, like, Huawei's actually going to beat us. So, you don't get like the full, you know, I am present here with you intellectual honesty. We're like trying to explain things and teach you and teach the audience. We're kind of playing this like, weird 4D chess PR game, which ends up oftentimes being a less sparkling intellectual interaction than if you just had someone who is just a dude or a gal that
Like some random guy who blogs, something
exactly.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, or just someone who learns a lot about a topic who doesn't have a big financial interest in, how it goes one way, financial or electoral interest in how it goes one way or another.
They're not afraid that they're going to get fired from their job if they slander the wrong person.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Then I have a piece of advice for you.
Sure.
This has to do with you made a guest appearance on that podcast with Ezra Klein. Derek, well, no, you weren't the one that made a guest appearance. They made a guest appearance on your podcast. Ezra Klein, Dan Wong, Derek Thompson, and the two of them that were podcast hosts. You asked them for advice of like, imagine that you're talking to a guest and they've been like a B- for the first 10 minutes where it's listenable but it's not great. How do you turn that around? How do you make that into like a much more sparkling conversation? How do you increase the chemistry there?
Oh, what's my answer to that question?
What is your answer to that question?
I mean, if it's someone I know well, I just tell them and I say, go do some jumping jacks or like have a coffee or do some push-ups. Or you just start asking like very different questions, modulate your voice, try to like bring a different energy, make a dumb joke, make fun of yourself.
Increase the level of spiciness that you're willing to tolerate in terms of the questions you ask them.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing about like if you're going on a date, right? And it's not going great, you just got to throw shit at the wall. Like, if you keep doing the same thing, nothing is going to change, right?
Yeah. If you keep doing the same thing, then nothing is going to change. That on a completely unrelated note, you made a guest appearance on Robert Wright's podcast last year, where Robert Wright described you as
oh my God, yeah.
Yeah. I know why you're smiling and why you're laughing, but I'm not going to say anything. But yeah, Robert Wright said that he characterized you as a proud subscriber to what is called the China consensus in DC. You would characterize the China consensus as like the dominant narrative from 2014 to like December of 2024, where basically the idea is that Xi Jinping, the president of the People's Republic of China, is bad news, and the U.S. like I'm quoting you right now. You would say the U.S. can bring a better 21st century around to itself and to the Asia Pacific by working with all of our democratic friends in the region to shape the geopolitical landscape towards one that is more in favor of a liberal democratic institution than like one where China gets what it wants. Was that what your position was like a year ago on U.S.-China relations?
More or less, I'd say, sure.
Do you still think that the U.S. has a moral responsibility to deter China's influence in the world?
This is like you're throwing on my like high school debate hat now if we're talking about like moral responsibility and the thing just or not. I don't know if I can go all the way back to like Kant with you here.
I'm throwing stuff at the wall. I'm trying to see what sticks.
Okay. Yeah. I think this is a question which like kind of depends on the trade-offs that are associated. So I think it's fine as like a premise, but it is a very big and broad one, and it sort of is the actual answer and the way to apply that, I think, varies a lot under sort of like different geographies and different contexts, and what we're defining as influence. Like, do I have a problem that like lots of that like Naja made $150 million in movie theaters around the world? Like, not at all. I think it's great that like Chinese like there are more Chinese cultural products going around the world. Do I have a problem if like China invents more drugs and we like cure cancer, or like get your a new like cool insulin device from a Chinese medical device manufacturer? Like, not really. I think this is like net positive for the planet. Would I care if like, Chinese influence means selling weapons to Iran or being like anti democratic and supporting autocracies that really like shouldn't exist anymore. No, I'm not so cool with that. So, kind of depends.
Is that your final answer, or is that like the PR answer that I need to peel back with my next few questions?
I'm not sure. I mean, the answer is like yes, generally, but particular cases, there are like influence. Can mean many things. More and like moral responsibility can also mean many things, and I think you sort of need to sort of tier out what influence is fine, helpful for the world, what influence is really not, and then tier out kind of, and then like match those to different like levels of like moral responsibility. And kind of like do a larger exercise. I don't know if that's like good podcast content to like run through the sub points there, but it's up to you, Andrew.
Let's give it a shot. Like I said, I'm throwing different darts at the wall. This will be one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, like different kinds of influence. How about like you would agree that there are very, very unique types of influence that the current president is exerting on the world compared to the types of influence that past presidents have exerted on the world, right?
Sure.
Yeah. All right, so like the types of influence that the current president is exerting on the world, has it caused you to have more or less faith in the US's role in the global order in terms of the extent to which it can positively influence other countries?
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't know how we're getting back to where we were from where we are today. I mean, it'll almost it may end up being kind of a generational arc to have the U.S. sort of have the similar level of like stature and influence and trust that you saw, from let's say like 1990 to 2016. So the sort of Overton window of what's possible in American politics is like expanding by the day as you watch this administration kind of do crazier and crazier stuff. What you can kind of fall back to is like the alternative, right? Of for however messed up American politics is, it is thermostatic, and the pendulum shifts, and it'll shift back at some point.
Do you think it'll shift back to where it was before Trump? Like, do you think that's possible?
Probably not, right?
Like it like to me, it feels like Trump has just like broken the pendulum entirely.
I mean, I think it's maybe swinging on a slightly different axis, but and maybe it's like resonating at a different frequency. But no, like things will change. I think that's a fair assumption, right? This man isn't going to be around forever. He's almost 80, and lots of people, in his like. I don't think there is a single person, a single sort of like Republican or, Republican candidate, much less any Democratic candidate who might be president in 2029 that agrees with him on like more than 50% of his things. And it's sort of, I think like maybe the lesson is like the sort of presidents end up being more particularist. Like I think the amount that like one person's like random views on things can shape the world is a lot wider than maybe I had priced in, or like what you'd seen in the past 100 years of American history. But most people are normies, or just like in a much narrower band of viewpoints, and I think that will hold true even in the 2028 cycle and beyond. And I do think there's something like very just like remarkable and aberrant about Trump. Like I don't know if there are other people who can like be that distinctive and still end up being president. He has some crazy kind of animal magnetism that has gotten him through this, which like you just don't see in many human beings, much less ones who want to be president. So I don't know. What do you think, Andrew?
Yeah, I think maybe I'll start with the stuff that you said that I agree with, and also I love how you ended by saying, "What do you think, Andrew?" That's like the sign that I brought a podcaster as a guest. I think that this is not something that I've mentioned on my podcast before, but I think that the rise of Trumpism over the past decade or so has unironically made me a lot more sympathetic to the great man theory of history. I think that I think that so many people in so many powerful positions are often like overestimate how important like structural factors were for the rise of Trump and how much of it was just a product of Trump as an individual himself. Like let's take the fact that Trump's brazen corruption and incompetence. Like would you agree that Trump is like very uniquely corrupt and very uniquely incompetent in a way that like was not true for like presidents over the past several decades, like the or like presidents within our lifetimes? Like would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I think it's not. I don't know how you make the counter case. Like the sort of like quote unquote level of corruption that you've seen in other administrations. I mean, even you go back to like Teapot Dome and stuff, you don't have the president's kids making the equivalent of billions of dollars. It's almost like in that era of stuff, it was almost like it was more like presidents who kind of didn't have a grasp on their cabinet secretaries, and they were the ones who, or like officials, and they were the ones who were like making deals and eventually got caught. But the fact that it's like multiple cabinet members and officials' children, as well as the president's children, and the dollar amount.
And sometimes they're like openly bragging about this on social media.
Openly bragging about it. And then you have, pardons given to the sort of the direct, the exchange is just so direct that I think it's, I think it's without parallel. And I think this is another one of these thermostatic things where there's going to be a real pushback. And there's like real nausea attached to this. And this is, I don't know, people think it's really gross. This is like over the course of human history, over the course of democracies, like it's one of the easiest things to like run and win on is like these other guys are corrupt. We got to kick them out of office. And the fact that there's such a clear, there's such a clear line to draw for politicians today, and I think it'll be even more transparent once you get 2 years of investigations if the Democrats win the House or the Senate. I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll have in the next year hopefully hit peak corruption.
That's part of the reason why I'm more sympathetic to the great man theory of history now that Trump has been in office, is that I realize that like there are so many things that Trump has been doing where like he's inevitably shaping the discourse in a way that is a unique product of him, where if someone else came, like all the structural factors that people talk about, whether it be like America becoming a more diverse nation, or the rise of social media, or like the foreign policy blunders of the Iraq War, stuff like that, like all of that, like even if it led to someone like Trump, like I don't think you can make the argument that like someone else outside of Trump would have been like even like 20% as corrupt as he and his like administration's officials are being. I think that that's a very unique product of him. And I think that that's maybe this is the pessimistic devil's advocate to what you're saying about how the pendulum is going to swing back because, like, sure, let's say Republicans are voted out of office in 2028 because of corruption. Have you ever, like, I don't actually think that that's going to like reset America back to like the status quo, or even anywhere close to the status quo in terms of how much corruption is accepted. Like, are you familiar with the concept of the Roger Bannister effect?
Please elucidate me.
All right, so I'm going to read this Claude-generated description. Basically, there's this runner called Roger Bannister who was the first runner who broke the 4-minute mile. Like, he was the first one to run the mile in less than 4 minutes because, like, according to Claude, the prevailing wisdom at the time was that it was physiologically impossible. But after Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, within about a year of Bannister doing it, several others had too. Like, the broader underlying idea behind the Roger Bannister effect is sometimes called an existence proof. Once someone
Yep.
demonstrates a thing is achievable, it collapses the psychological barrier for everyone else. Like, basically, like the Everest example is a great parallel in that, like, after people climbed Mount Everest for the first time, like summits up to the top of Mount Everest became increasingly common, eventually routine. Like, there are so many things in life where people think that it's impossible or that like no one would ever do it, but then when one person does it, it it opens the floodgates, and tons and tons and tons and tons of other people are willing to do it because of the precedent that has been set. Do you see where I'm going with this?
With corruption,
Yes.
um, I mean, look, like doing the corruption, you have to be shameless, and you have to be shameless at a level of shamelessness, which is like historically aberrant. Um, and I think that is, that is a character trait which is like defined his entire life, is just like all press is good press. I don't care if I screw people. I don't care if, I bankrupt people, whatever. I like, it doesn't matter. There's like literally it's all it. There's no ego, no super ego with this man. And he's sort of been able to like cast this spell of invincibility. The famous line, if I shot someone and on Fifth Ave, even if I shot someone in like broad daylight on Fifth Avenue, like I'd still have 50% of the country love me. Like there's something sort of wizard like about that, which I just don't think there are many other human beings on the planet that applies to. So yes, this scale of corruption is like unimaginable, but the idea that it will be like that type of person and that type of ambition is like a successful is like a dominant political strategy going forward. And because like personal corruption where you're just enriching your family. I mean, the thing about corruption in other contexts, right, is like the reason it would work in politics is like, okay, then you'll like employ all these people and they'll vote for you and knock on your doors. Like that's not like the political economy we have here. The corruption doesn't kind of like feed back into a machine. It's just like literally going into Donald Trump Jr.'s pocket so he can like buy better, hunting gear or whatever. So I don't see a sort of self-reinforcing dimension to it at all, really. It just seems like is there anything about Trump that makes him more effective politically because he like takes money from the Binance CEO and pardons him? I don't think so. I think it's all negative. He just like has this weird character flaw that he doesn't care or think it's a problem.
Maybe the problem is that like it only has a very mildly negative effect when in reality it like in an ideal world would be one where this is an impeachable offense. Something like that.
Yeah. But look, like I think most politicians are like in it for the power and are in it to like shape the country and do things or whatever, or even get reelected or help their party get reelected. And there's no, aside from like making money that like might end up throwing you in jail in the next, over the next decade or something, like there's no like positive political externality for taking money to give someone a pardon. So I don't know.
Yeah, so you think that like Trump's uniquely bad corruption, obviously he has a very unique personality that gave him the courage to do that in a way that politicians before him wouldn't have had the courage. But you don't think that future presidents would end up learning a thing or two from Donald Trump, and like even like you don't think they would have the courage to be even 10% as corrupt as Trump?
Well, look, I think Biden, right, at the end of his term, pardoned his whole family. Would he have done that if Trump wasn't around or wasn't going to be president next? I don't think so. And there's something like deeply gross about that. That here's this guy who's all about like institutional whatever. Like he's not getting like, I don't know, he's not getting rich off of this sort of thing, but still he pardoned family members that like probably committed crimes. I don't think that's great. And maybe that's a bit of the Overton window expanding with like kind of unseemly behavior, but that's different than like Hunter Biden like got a few $100,000, right, from this bank and the Chinese, and same thing with Jed Bush, right? We're like 5 orders of magnitude bigger now, and look, maybe I'm just being hopeful because I'm so horrified by it that I don't want it to be like an endemic part of the system like it is in other countries. So, I don't know. I'm reading more about this. Like, check in with me in 6 months. But I think there are enough antibodies in the U.S. system that this won't end up kind of becoming a new
New normal
dominant strategy or steady state going forward. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe the way that I can get more like maximize the percentage of darts that hit the wall right now is by turning this into like a group therapy session. Like some of your recent episodes of Second Breakfast or War Talk, sometimes it feels like you're having a group therapy session with them where they're all just like dooming about what the fuck is going on, and you're just like there to help set the tone. Do you ever feel that way?
I think a lot of these podcast shows are sort of, I don't know, therapy adjacent. Like I book people that I can at some level be sympathetic to. I don't really like booking like shows that I feel like me being combative is the best version of it. And it's interesting to get inside people's heads and have them sort of share what their thought process is, how they kind of like experience these issues and events as human beings. So, there's really something to it. Like Terry Gross of NPR's Fresh Air is the master of this, of just like very quickly like kind of establishing emotional connection with their guest, and allowing them to sort of open up and share unique perspectives. This is not something that happens very often in sort of policy discussion. So when there's opportunities to sort of bring that more human aspect to these discussions, I like probing in that direction.
Yeah, so what are some of the emotion? I'm not okay. I'm not going to ask that. Um,
Whatever, man. Do you?
you've talked a little bit about how like the Overton window is expanding in potentially some of the wrong directions. What are some ways in which you think that Trump's recent foreign policy actions will negatively affect the Overton window of U.S. foreign policy going forward?
I mean, we haven't like abducted other leaders in a while. I don't know if that's going to be a new normal, but that is really something. Um, the degree to which he's like threatened allies is also unique. The degree to it, the patience which he's shown to Putin in particular, is unique, in U.S. history. So those would probably be the three foreign policy ones, which are sort of most apparent, is like dictator coddling, sort of ally, uh, dismissing allies, and then these sort of like increasingly aggressive uses of military force. TBD on whether or not the next generation of politicians are going to pick up on it. I do think that there's something really seductive about being a president and having all of these like powers and buttons you can press, particularly in the foreign policy realm. I mean, it's sort of awe-inspiring how much a president can do without any real checks from Congress or other corners of the executive branch. So this is like a long-standing trend in history, is like once you get in your second term, once your like domestic legislative agenda peters out, then like you start doing crazy stuff abroad because those are buttons you can press. So from that perspective, this hasn't been so wild, but I don't know. Hopefully things will cool down.
Maybe the right lesson to take away from this is that the U.S. has way too much power, and like U.S. presidents in particular have moral authority to do things that they shouldn't be allowed to do. Like they shouldn't be allowed to start wars in foreign countries, not only like without congressional approval, but like without the approval of, say, the UN or any like foreign international bodies. Like, do you think what would you say to the argument that many on the left have made that like especially in light of Trump's recent brazen, really terrible foreign policy decisions. This casts light on the idea that like the US and like the commander in chief has way too much authority to just do random stuff around the world that he should not have the authority to do.
Seems right to me. I don't know. I mean, look, there are the sort of like expeditionary things that presidents have done in like my political consciousness, right? Iraq War, Afghanistan War, both got votes. Libya was a weird one because like he tried to go to Congress and Congress like wouldn't even give him a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So then he just like made this international coalition and kind of went with it.
Oh, like Congress deliberately abdicated responsibility.
Yeah, they literally said like, we're not. I don't want to. It's easier for us to just like criticize you on the side than
It's easier for us to be part of the peanut gallery than to.
yes, than it is to like actually take responsibility and take a stand and have to like, live with the consequences of our decision. So yeah, sort of wild.
Yeah. So like what would you say to the idea that like maybe an ideal version of the world would be after Trump leaves office, like and then whoever the president is in power, like a lot of the people who have like engaged in like war crimes or piracy or like blatantly illegal actions would be the stuff where like an ideal like tail risk scenario that is probably not going to happen, but we can hope would be all of those people guilty of war crimes. You put them in front of a UN court and allow them to decide their fate. Like, what, like, A, do you think that would be like one of the best case scenarios? And B, do you think that's like remotely plausible?
All the Americans.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's never going to happen. Like we're not party to the International Court of Justice. Like I think that is basically like a non possibility. I mean, the nice thing about the U.S. system is that like absent a president pardoning anyone, like there is a real justice system. It does have real investigatory powers. It has put officials and powerful people in jail in the past. So, and we also have Congress, which has real investigative powers. So I'm, cautiously optimistic that we'll be able to get to the bottom of some of these things at some point in the future. But I think kind of handing it over to a sort of like, international justice organization, which like 5 months after Iran shot 30,000 people in the street is still not doing any investigation into that seems like maybe not. Yeah, I think those institutions really like have some serious problems.
What would you say to like a world where UN approval is necessary, if any, like if in order for a country to actually go to war? Yeah.
I mean, that's a weird hypothetical because it's like literally impossible. I mean, it's interesting. I did my thesis about the origins of the UN. There was this vision of it, actually around the League of Nations, and then in their early, and it got kind of developed more in the 1944-45. This idea of a UN Air Force that would be able to bomb countries that started wars to kind of convince them not to. So this vision of like the UN as actually like a powerful police force to kind of dissuade countries from doing from invading other countries was like part of its very origin and the hope of it. That became sort of not really feasible once you had a Cold War that started and a U.S. and Soviet Union that didn't trust each other. And we're now in a similar position where you have major the two most powerful countries in the world like don't really see eye to eye about a ton of things. So there was a bit of a moment of this in the first Gulf War, right? I think Libya also was something that Putin, that Russia either like abstained in or even maybe voted for. And so that, those moments I think have been really fleeting over the past 75 years. And I don't see a universe, I don't see a timeline over the next 20 where we'll end up like getting everyone to kind of be cool about stuff. I mean, there were sort of edge cases, right? Like eventually, China sort of changed its tune on supporting the Sudanese regime over the course of the 2000s, but that was like really painful and millions
Like
of people had to die before them
because
to
of the
get there.
UN?
Not because of the UN. I think I'm just talking about like having great powers aligned to like stop conflicts is like a rare thing where you get everyone who has a nuclear weapon kind of like lined up and pulling in one direction. Yeah, a nice to have, but sort of an unrealistic scenario ultimately, I think, Andrew.
Do you see any viable alternative to the current world we live in where the commander in chief is basically just allowed to unilaterally start wars whenever he feels like it without congressional approval and without like the sanctioning of any other like foreign governing body?
I mean, foreign governing body, that's never going to happen. But domestic body, like there's, I mean, what's the question here? Is like, is Congress going to wake up ever? It did in the 70s for a time. You know, you had after Watergate, you had the Church Commission. It was this post-Vietnam too. I think there was just like a lot of anger and pushback among both like kind of a new age of legislators as well as the established ones who are like sick of the executive branch lying to them. Are we going to get that anytime soon? I don't think so. It'd be nice, but there's a fascinating book by Philip Wallach about that sort of like talks about the past, present, and potential future of a revived Congress. And so this is a pendulum that has been swinging too. I think like the secular trend definitely is for like the legislative branch to be a denuded one, but maybe they'll get some self-respect at some point. Want to take the reins again? One could
Yes.
hope.
Yeah, so like I guess maybe like the UN stepping in and like get like having a larger say in whether or not someone goes to war, like that's like you would consider that to be an unfeasible, right?
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
we had many wars since 1945. No one has been asking the UN for permission, and when the UN has said we don't like that war, the war doesn't end, right? So yeah, I mean, sort of like militarized world government seems like a long way off.
Yeah. So like the only feasible world that like is better than our current world in terms of like the US and like the degree to which it has the authority to like bomb foreign countries would be one where Congress like steps in and starts doing its job more. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, yeah, I mean, look, the Trump's like the president's the commander of the armed forces, and there's this whole weird gray area between declaring a war and like having an authorization for military force and sort of like what a president can color under the lines. And I think presidents like having degrees of freedom and authority, and the world moves a lot faster than it did a long time ago. So like, there's an argument to be made in favor of having an executive, which can like be smarter and trickier and move faster than like having a 3-month legislative debate about whether or not to,
And like has more legal authority to do what they want.
yeah. So that was kind of the whole argument that like created the national security state in the 40s and 50s after World War II, was that you needed to have a more active, flexible executive. But so yeah, yeah. The only break is Congress, and Congress would have to really step up in order to change what has been a secular trend for decades now.
Yeah. So like this has been a trend for decades and decades and decades now. Do you think that maybe so like let's say that the next president they're not even 10% as corrupt as Trump, like both because of like structural reasons and because of pragmatic reasons and because of the incentives and so on and so forth. Do you think that they might be like even a quarter as intervention like unnecessarily interventionist as Trump? Do you think Trump might be like creating precedents that like where he's giving a permission structure for future presidents to like engage in wars or like meddle in foreign affairs to an extent that previous presidents didn't feel like they had the authority to do?
I mean, I don't think like Trump doing the wars he started, I don't think is aberrant in US history. Like we've had a lot of like random stuff that presidents have done. No, I mean, like of all the things that Trump's done, like starting foreign wars is like kind of par for the course when it comes to US history. But you know, we had I think a real hesitation for a while, and if it was anyone but Trump, right? Like, you know, the sort of like, you know, we had a Vietnam hangover for a while, and then like we had a sort of Iraq hangover for a while, and now we might have a sort of Iran war hangover for a while too, potentially. I don't know, maybe not. I don't think Iran is big enough to really like trigger the whole hangover thing, but we'll see how dark it gets.
Okay, so maybe, yeah, so basically, like, what are some very bad norms and precedents that Trump is setting that future presidents might copy? And how can we prevent those future presidents from copying those norms and precedents?
Andrew, this is a good question, but I have to leave in like 45 seconds
and you really
pick a kid up from daycare.
You can't do anything about this like later today.
Like no, this is when my work day ends. I gotta be with my family. But
okay.
I enjoyed doing the show with you, Andrew. I'm excited to see what you do with it and what you make with your what you make with your episode.
This is going to be a very interesting editing job.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe you saying that you have to go. Maybe I'll include that in the final cut.
It's your show, man.
All right.
This was fun.
Okay,
right,
one last question. Could I shamelessly steal many of your Suno prompts because I want to try creating an AI generated song for this?
I have no Suno prompts. I just give it the transcript and I say give me some song ideas, and then I pick one and I say make a song, and then I kind of like fix it. But yeah, there's no secret sauce to it. You just make Claude do a first draft and then kind of edit it to make it.
Yeah, I really wish we had more time, but I guess you have to pick up your kid.
Okay. All right. I will talk to you soon, Andrew.
Talk to you soon.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wish me luck. Yeah.
The pendulum swings on a different axis now, resonating at a frequency we don't quite know how. 5 orders of magnitude, the dollar amounts climb. All ID, no ego, when he doesn't think it's a crime. Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile. Now everyone's running with the same brazen style. An existence proof once someone shows it's done. The floodgates open and they all start to run. It strictly dominates, strictly dominates. The corruption feeds nothing, it just concentrates. The pendulum's broken or it's swinging somewhere new. Cautiously optimistic, what else can you do? Senators who won't vote, they'd rather throw darts. Easier to criticize from the peanut gallery's heart. Overton windows wide, the sky keeps getting strange. Thermostatic system, will it ever find its range? Terry Gross could make them open up and speak, but there's 4-dimensional chess when the powerful seek to answer your question and not piss off the throne. You don't get full honesty, you get the PR tone. It strictly dominates, strictly dominates. The corruption feeds nothing, it just concentrates. The pendulum's broken or it's swinging somewhere new. Cautiously optimistic, what else can you do? It's all ID'd, no superego. Fifth Avenue, broad daylight, and still the numbers hold. Wizard-like spell of invincibility. But most people are normies. Most people are normies. Most people are normies.